I was working the front desk at a mid-sized hotel just off International Drive in Orlando, Florida. I'd been at that job for about 2 years by that point, mostly doing evening and overnight shifts, because honestly, the shift differential pay made it worth it, even though sleeping during the day is never really something your body fully gets used to. Most nights were the same routine: check-ins, complaints about the Wi-Fi, the occasional drunk guest who couldn't figure out their room key. Nothing I couldn't handle. But there was one night that I still think about regularly, even now. It started around 9 p.m. when a man walked up to the desk. He was maybe mid-40s, medium build, wearing a plain grey hoodie and dark jeans. Nothing about him immediately stood out, but there was something off about the way he was carrying himself, like he was trying really hard to seem casual. He leaned against the counter and asked me if I could confirm what room a specific guest was staying in, giving me a woman's name. I told him what I tell everyone, that we don't share guest room information with third parties per our privacy policy, and that if he needed to reach her, he could use the house phone in the lobby. He nodded, said, "Okay, no problem," and stepped away. I thought that was the end of it. About an hour later, I noticed him sitting in one of the lobby chairs near the elevators. He wasn't on his phone, wasn't reading anything, just sitting there. My co-worker, a guy named Darius who was doing a crossover shift with me that night, also noticed, and we both kind of looked at each other, but didn't say anything yet. It wasn't technically against any rule to sit in the lobby, so we just kept an eye on him. Then around 10:30, the house phone rang. It was the woman whose name the man had asked about earlier. Her voice was low and shaky, like she was trying not to be heard, and she told me that someone had been knocking on her door for the past several minutes and wouldn't stop. I asked her if she had opened the door at all, and she said, "No, I looked through the peephole and I don't recognize him." I told her to keep her door locked and that I was going to send someone up immediately. I looked over at the lobby chairs. The man was gone. I told Darius what happened, and he went upstairs while I stayed at the desk. He called me on the radio a couple minutes later, saying the hallway was completely clear, no sign of anyone. He knocked on the woman's door and let her know security had swept the floor, but she was clearly still shaken. She asked if we could have someone stationed near her floor for the rest of the night, and I told her I'd do what I could. What bothered me was the timing. From the moment I picked up that phone call to when I looked up and noticed the man was gone from the lobby, it could not have been more than 30 seconds. I pulled up the camera feeds at the desk. He wasn't on any of them. Not heading toward the elevators, not walking out the front doors, just gone from the lobby like he evaporated. I radioed our actual security guard, Marcus, who came in from patrolling the parking lot, and told him the whole situation. He started reviewing the lobby camera footage more carefully and eventually found the guy slipping out a side entrance that led to the parking structure, and he did it right around the same time the woman called the front desk. Almost like he knew to leave the moment she picked up the phone. That detail alone made my stomach drop. We documented everything, flagged the situation in our incident log, and Marcus stayed near the woman's floor for the rest of the night. She checked out the next morning without any more issues and thanked us on her way out, which I was relieved about. But here's where it gets even stranger. 2 days later, I got a call at the front desk from someone identifying themselves as the woman's sister. She wanted to know if her sister had checked out safely because she wasn't answering her phone and hadn't come home. I confirmed the checkout and gave her what general information I could. The sister asked if anything unusual had happened during her stay, and I paused for a second before telling her about the incident with the man at the desk. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and then she told me that her sister had recently gotten out of a really bad situation involving an ex-partner who had a history of showing up places he wasn't supposed to be. I don't know for certain if the man at my desk was that person. I don't know if the woman made it home fine or if something happened after she left our property. The police were contacted, but since she had technically checked out on her own and there was no confirmed incident, there wasn't much of a formal investigation to speak of, at least not one that I was ever updated on. What I do know is that a man asked for her room number. She called in a panic about someone at her door, and he disappeared from our lobby in under 30 seconds. Whether those things are connected or just a really uncomfortable string of coincidences, I honestly can't say for sure. But the way her sister's voice sounded on that phone call has stuck with me ever since. I've worked that front desk for another year after that night, and every time a man walks up asking for a specific woman's room, my hand goes to the phone before he even finishes the sentence. This happened to me about 2 years ago when I was traveling solo through Nashville for a long weekend. I'd planned the whole trip myself, booked a hotel just off the main strip, bought a few concert tickets, the whole thing. I was really looking forward to it since I rarely get time to myself like that. The hotel I chose was one of those mid-range chains, not super fancy, but clean enough and well reviewed. It had maybe 4 floors, a decent-sized lobby, and one of those small gyms that nobody ever actually uses. My room was on the 3rd floor, and it seemed perfectly fine when I first checked in. The first night went without any issues. I came back late from a show, showered, and knocked out. No problems. It was actually on the 2nd evening when things started to go sideways. I had come back to the hotel around 7 p.m. to freshen up before heading back out. I was sitting on the bed scrolling through my phone when I heard a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone at all, so I got up and looked through the peephole. It was a man I had never seen before in my life. He was older, maybe late 50s, wearing a dark jacket. I asked through the door what he needed, and he said something about having the wrong room, apologized, and walked off. I found it a little strange, but figured it was just a genuine mix-up and let it go. I went out again that night and got back to the hotel around midnight. I got changed and was sitting at the small desk near the window when I noticed a folded piece of paper that had been slid under my door. I picked it up and opened it. It said,
"I know you're in there alone. Be careful."
That's it. No name, no room number, nothing. Just those 2 sentences handwritten in all capitals. I genuinely did not know what to do with that. Part of me thought maybe it was left at the wrong door and it was some kind of joke between other guests, but another part of me felt deeply unsettled. I double-locked the door immediately, put the swing latch on, and tried to think clearly. I called the front desk and told them what had happened. The guy on the phone sounded a little caught off guard, said he would notify the manager and check the hallway cameras. He asked me to hold on to the note and stay in the room. About 20 minutes later, someone from the hotel knocked on my door and identified themselves. I looked through the peephole before opening it. It was the front desk attendant. He told me they had reviewed the footage and could see a man walking down my hallway around 9:30 p.m., which lined up with when I was out. He had stopped at my door, crouched down, and slid the note underneath. The part that really got to me was what came next. The attendant told me that the same man had approached the front desk earlier that afternoon, while I was still checked in, and had tried to get a second key card to my room by claiming to be my husband and saying he had locked himself out. The desk clerk on that shift had asked for his ID, which he couldn't provide, so they had turned him away. But they hadn't thought to flag it or call me at the time, which I was honestly furious about. The police were called. A report was filed. They were able to pull the footage and get a decent still image of the man's face, but I don't know what ultimately came of it, because I checked out the very next morning. I was not about to spend another night in that building. The hotel refunded me for the remaining nights without any argument, which told me they knew how badly they had dropped the ball by not alerting me after that keycard incident earlier in the day. To this day, I don't know who that man was or how he knew I was traveling by myself. Maybe he had seen me check in alone the day before. Maybe he had overheard me at the front desk. I genuinely have no idea. What I do know is that if that desk clerk on the earlier shift hadn't asked for his ID, he could have walked right into my room while I was gone, or worse, while I was there. I always use the swing latch now, every single time, the moment I walk into a hotel room. It's such a small thing, but honestly, after that trip, it doesn't feel optional anymore. Every summer without fail, we do a family trip. It's kind of our thing. Me, my wife, and our 2 daughters, Lily and Maya, I'll keep their real names out of it, have been doing it since the girls were barely old enough to remember. We rotate between different places each year, but we tend to stick to beach resorts since the girls love the water. This particular summer, we booked a 5-night stay at a resort in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It was well reviewed, had a lazy river, 2 outdoor pools, and sat right on the beach. From the outside, it was exactly the kind of place you picture when you think of a perfect summer vacation. For the first 2 days, everything was great. It was the 3rd afternoon when things started feeling off. Lily was 12 at the time, and Maya was 9. My wife and I were relaxing near the main pool while the girls were in the water. They had made a few friends with other kids staying at the resort, which was normal. I wasn't watching every second of it, but I was glancing over regularly like any parent would. At some point during the afternoon, I noticed a woman sitting on the far side of the pool, alone. No kids with her, no partner, no book, nothing. She was just watching the pool. I didn't think too deeply into it at first, figured she was waiting for someone. When we gathered the girls to head back to the room for dinner, Lily mentioned that a woman had started talking to her while she was in the shallow end. She said the woman had complimented her swimsuit and asked how old she was, what school she went to, and whether she was there with family or just one parent. I stopped walking when she said that last part. I asked her to repeat it. She did. I asked her what she told the woman, and she said she told her both of her parents were there. I kept my voice calm and just told her that was good and that she shouldn't give personal information to strangers. My wife and I exchanged a look, but didn't say anything more about it in front of the girls that moment. Later that night, after the kids were watching something on TV, I told my wife what was really bothering me. There's no reason a lone adult at a resort pool is asking a 12-year-old girl whether she's there with one parent or 2. None. My wife agreed, and we decided that from that point on, the girls were not going to be at the pool without one of us in the water with them, not just nearby. The next morning we went down to the beach instead. It was a good day, nothing strange happened, and I started wondering if I had been overthinking things. But then that evening, we went back down to the pool area around 5 o'clock. The same woman was there again, sitting in almost the exact same spot. This time she had sunglasses on, but there was no mistaking her, and I noticed quickly that she was watching our kids specifically. Not in the way parents scan a pool for their own children, but in the way someone watches something they're interested in. I sat there and watched her for a few minutes, and her gaze barely moved from where Lily and Maya were playing. I told my wife to stay with the girls, and I walked over to where the woman was sitting. I don't think I've ever approached a situation as calmly as I did in that moment, because on the inside I was furious. I sat down in the chair next to her and told her in a low but very clear voice that I had noticed her talking to my daughter the day before. She didn't seem caught off guard, which bothered me. She smiled and said she was just being friendly, that kids at resorts reminded her of her own children. I asked her where her children were. She paused for a second too long and then said they were grown. I told her plainly that I didn't want her speaking to my daughters again, and I got up and walked away. She left the pool area about 10 minutes later. That night, I went to the front desk and told them what had happened, describing the woman and explaining both instances. The man at the desk said he would flag it with their security team and look into which room she was staying in. I appreciated that he took it seriously, but I wasn't going to rely on the resort to handle this for me. I pulled Lily aside and told her, without sugarcoating it too much, that the woman had made us uncomfortable and that she was not to be alone anywhere in the resort for the rest of the trip. Lily was a little shaken hearing it put that way, but she understood. We didn't see the woman again for the rest of the stay. Security said they were unable to confirm her room without more information, and since nothing had technically happened, there was a limit to what they could do. But what stays with me is that set of questions she asked Lily.
Are you here with your family, or just one parent?
That's not small talk. That's someone figuring out how protected a child is. I genuinely don't know what that woman's intentions were, and maybe I never will. What I do know is that I'm grateful my daughter answered the way she did. I've thought about that detail more times than I can count since we got home.